now. Good, 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 good to be alive right about now. Good, 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 good to be alive right about now. Hallelujah.
Happening with that. If you have any questions about what's going on, the whole last 4 weeks of sermon series was about that, so go check those out on our website or on YouTube. And this flyer was one you can give to your friends, you can read over, but all the information here is about what we call the Commons on Shay, so check that out as well. Okay, today though, we are starting this new series called Horrible Warnings. And it's a practical series, so one you can bring your friends and family to, because we're looking at things in the Bible that serve as warnings. Now, typically, we look at the Bible, we think of it as the good book, right? Who's called the good book before? Kind of older phrase, yeah, the good book. So you kind of figure out that the good book's got good examples, good stories. But there's also some bad examples in the good book as well. Some things that we are told not to do, kind of like horrible warnings of things to avoid. And that shouldn't be a surprise to us throughout our life, especially today in our world today. There's warnings on everything. Everything, your cup of coffee to just, like for example, look at this right here. This is a warning, it's hard to read though, on a package of fishing lures. See, it says lures up here, product made of brass or copper. Then it says down here, harmful if swallowed. Is that for the fish? Hey, Mr. Fish, this is harmful if it's swallowed. Do you hang it on the hook? I don't know. Anyway, so it's a warning. How about this one? This one's for Jim Langdahl. It's a Dremel. You have a Dremel, Jim? You have a Dremel, right? It says right here, this product is not intended to be used as a dental drill. Yeah, John, I don't know. I mean, did someone try that and call the company and say it didn't work for my cavities? I don't know. Speaking of misusing equipment, this one is on a washing machine. Do not put any person in this washer. Look, I know we're busy. We're all really busy, but take your clothes off before you put them in the washer. Won't save a lot of time just jumping in there and getting your shower and your clothes washed at the same time. This one is on those cardboard covers you put in your windshield, those little reflective things. It says, never drive your vehicle with a sunshade in your windshield. You got to say that, like, really? Like, I can't see where I'm going. Like, someone did it, obviously. Now, this is my favorite, too. This is medicine for a dog. It says dog. The dog's name is Parker. Now, I want to meet this dog first, because it says here, alcohol may intensify the effects. It says Parker drink a little bit too much when he takes his medicine. And then it says, use care when operating heavy machinery. My dogs dig in the backyard. They don't use a backhoe to do it, right? Okay, speaking of dogs, let's stay on this one. This is on a dog wash, like the shampoo used for dog. It says, this is hilarious, remember to eliminate all escape routes well in advance. A tip, once your pet is slippery wet, he or she is suddenly smarter and faster than you are. Like, how dumb do you think the owners are that you need that warning? I don't know. A lot of warnings out there, some good ones. The Bible has warnings too, but they're not labels like that. They're not like just don't do this or do that. They're often stories from people's lives. Like they're living stories, things that are lived, not labels. Catherine Aird once said this, and you've heard this before. If you can't be a good example, then you'll just have to be a horrible warning. I think a lot of us would rather be a good example, don't you? I mean, I do. I want to be a good example. We have these, we had a service for Wayne Wirtz recently, and then we have services for Neil Lissenberger and Linda Bond coming up. They were good examples for us to follow, how they lived their lives and how they shared with their family and friends. Good examples. We want to be like them and good examples. We study the Bible together, looking for good examples and people we can explore their lives. People like Moses or Mary, Abraham or Jesus. But in the Bible, the author also included bad examples too. Horrible warnings of things that we shouldn't do and lives that we shouldn't lead. And by the way, they're not always like, here's this bad example, but they overcame and did this. Often they're not. They're like a bad example, and they stayed a bad example. And they really are just this big warning to us of how not to live our lives. So as we start this series today, I picked out, actually months ago, a topic that I thought we could all kind of connect with right off the bat. a topic that all of us have dealt with, a warning label that you can slap on every single human being. Everyone who has ever waited in traffic when they're running late to get to a meeting. A warning label you can put on anybody who got stuck behind someone at a light who was texting in traffic. A warning label you can put on anybody who's received a marketing call during dinner. A warning label you can put on anybody who's gone to the bathroom, looked at the roll next to them, and found one sheet left there. Like someone said, that's enough for the next person. I'm talking about anger. It's what we all deal with. All of us at some level deal with anger. It's a pretty common topic when we understand. However, it's often confusing when it comes to the biblical view of anger. I don't know if you realize this, but the words for anger in the Old Testament, so the Hebrew word for anger, or in the words that revolve around anger in the Old Testament, are used 3 times with God than with humans. God is 3 times more often angry than we are in the Old Testament. So what does that mean? Given our behavior, it's probably not surprising at times. And even the heroes and heroines of the Old Testament and the Bible often get angry. They're the best of us. Remember Moses at the burning bush? Remember that story? Right? Moses is there at the burning bush, and God says, hey, Moses, I want you to go and rescue my people. They've been slaves for 400 years. I want you to go and rescue them. And Moses is like, oh, man, I don't know. I'm not the guy. I don't speak very well. Why me? And what if they don't listen to me? Because all these excuses. In fact, in the Jewish commentary, the Talmud, of this text, it says that God argued with Moses for 7 days. 7 days. It says he tried to convince Moses to do this. And he says to Moses again, look, I know, I understand, I'll be with you. I don't care what your excuses are. It doesn't matter. I'm going to be with you every step of the way. Like a kid getting on a roller coaster. Ever done that? Come on, I'm going to go with you. It'll be fine. Just, you get him to go. Moses is trying to get Moses to go. And after 7 days, Moses finally comes clean of why he doesn't want to go. Exodus 4. But he said, "O Lord, please send somebody else. I just don't want to do it." Then the Lord became angry with Moses. For good reason. Because Moses is saying to God, I just don't trust you. That's the bottom line. I don't want to go. I don't trust you. I know people are enslaved. I know we want to rescue them, and there's responsibilities on me, but I just don't want to do it. Not interested. And God gets angry. Later on in the story, God reveals himself to Moses in a very special way on a mountain. And it says that in the story that God walks by Moses. Moses kind of hides his eyes as God passes by, and then God kind of tells Moses who he is. And he says this in Exodus 34. The Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. He is slow to anger, but he still gets mad. He still gets angry. And he says it right here about himself. And not just God, Jesus too. Jesus, toward the end of his life, is going into Jerusalem for the final time. When he arrives in Jerusalem, what's the first place he goes to? The temple in Jerusalem, right? He goes to this huge complex in the very top of the mountain there. It's huge, it's big. He goes there, and he sees what's going on. People are buying and selling animals in the temple courtyard. They are exchanging money in the temple courtyard. And the temple's set up so that the outer part of it, the biggest part of it, this part kind of right here, was called the court of the Gentiles. And it was the place that outsiders could go. Gentiles, not Jewish people, but Gentiles can go in this area, and they could pray there. But they put up all their animals and their tables and their money-changing tables all up in here. And the idea is that why make someone go over to the Mount of Olives to get a sheep or a goat to sacrifice? Why exchange money out here when you can do it right here? It's convenient, it's simple, it's easier, it's faster. However, in doing that, the Gentiles, the outsiders, didn't have a place to come pray. And Jesus sees this, and he's not excited about their method of convenience. In Mark 11, it says that he entered the temple and began to drive out those who are selling and those who are buying in the temple. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. You think he was angry? Yeah, he drove them out. He didn't go and say, hey guys, can you do me a favor? Can you move your stuff here in the corner so the Gentiles can pray? I'd really appreciate that. It'd be really great. No, he doesn't do that. He's ticked. He's angry because they are keeping the Gentiles from praying. They're being selfish. And he's angry about that. On another occasion, Jesus goes to the synagogue on Sabbath, the day of rest, and he's in his hometown of Capernaum. There's a guy there with a withered hand. So this guy can't work very well, probably a little bit of an outcast. And Jesus sees this guy. Now, the story's not about this guy. The story's about the leaders in the synagogue because they were sick and tired of Jesus being popular. Jesus is really popular. Things are going great for him. People like him. They're listening to him, and they're mad. And they're going to try to catch Jesus. They're going to try to trap him in a lie. They're going to try to trap him onto doing work on the Sabbath. Whatever they can do to set him up to catch him. And they're going to use this man with the withered hand to do it. So they get the little jealous eyes on this guy, and they don't offer to help him. They're going to use him as bait. Jesus has a soft spot for the marginalized. He has a soft spot for the poor and the oppressed and the outsider. And they know that his hospitality, his compassion is his weakness, and they're going to catch him. And so they put this guy in front of Jesus to see if they can get him to heal this guy on the Sabbath and therefore catch him. Mark 3. When he had said to the man with the withered hand, "Come forward," then he said to them, "Is it lawful to do good or to do harm on the Sabbath, to save life or to kill?" But they were silent. Now, why do you think they were silent? They know the answer to that question. The answer is to do good, to save a life. They know that's the answer. But it's not the answer they want. The truth doesn't matter to them. They've got an agenda. They got an agenda that they want to carry out. And so they're going to do whatever it takes, lying, putting things aside, ignoring the truth, to get their way done. And Jesus knows that. Jesus goes on. He looked around them with anger, it says. He was grieved at their hardness of heart. He was mad. He was mad that they were making this guy into a puppet. He was mad that they didn't care about him. He was mad that they were trying to trap him. At the same time, he was grieved because they won't listen. Sometimes I think Jesus feels like that about us sometimes. Angered and grieved for us because he cares about us. So, if God can get angry and Jesus can get angry, is it possible to be angry and not sin? Is anger always a bad thing? Well, sometimes anger can motivate. Sometimes we can do things when we get angry enough to help other people. Maybe we get angry enough about people being treated unfairly that we do something about it. Like this man in the story of Jesus who was used as a pawn. Sometimes we get angry enough, maybe, to help the marginalized and the poor and the oppressed because we're sick and tired of seeing it happen. So we do something about it. Sometimes we get angry enough to help innocent children or those who suffer from loneliness and isolation, and we do something about it because we finally get angry enough. But the question we have to ask ourselves is, where does our anger come from? What's the source of our anger? Is it righteousness? Is it a need for justice for somebody else? How others are treated? Or is the source of our anger self-centeredness and pride, self-importance, fear, or insecurity? What is it, when you ask yourself, why am I angry? What's motivating that anger? Because the source of your anger can lead to different results, and some are extremely dangerous. And I know you know that. That's not new news, that anger can lead to some serious, destructive, foolish behavior and action. So what is driving your anger? Because here's the truth about anger. If you don't deal with your anger, anger will find a way to deal with you. If you don't deal with your anger, anger will find a way to deal with you. It'll take you to places that you don't want to go, and places God doesn't want you to go either. Because anger affects our attitude toward other people. I mean, it's one thing to get angry at your remote, or to get angry at traffic or slow internet, but when you get angry at people, it affects your relationship with those people and with God. because it escalates. In Matthew 5, Jesus said this, "You have heard that it was said to those in ancient times, 'You shall not murder,' and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that if you're angry with your brother or sister, you'll be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you'll be liable to the council. And if you say, 'You fool,' you'll be liable to the hell of fire." Wow. Jesus has a lot to say about anger. Right? Murder has a source, anger. And he knows how dangerous it is. It's a poison that can creep into our souls. And so our first warning this week, our horrible warning for this week, is going to deal with anger. And it begins at the very beginning of the Bible. Right? The first few chapters, we see anger already in play in the story of Cain and Abel. Now, if you don't know who Cain and Abel is, they're the kids of Adam and Eve. So Adam and Eve are there in the garden. Things are going pretty good. They get kicked out of the garden, and they have kids. At least these two to begin with, Cain and Abel. Cain's born first. He is the first human with a belly button, if you think about it that way. Okay? It's true. And then you get his younger brother, Abel. Now, they had different careers. Cain grew, like it was a farmer, grew grain, vegetables, stuff like that. Abel was a herder, so he had animals and was a shepherd, stuff like that. So one day in Genesis 4, it says that Cain and Abel brought gifts of worship to God. And so it says that Cain brought some of the food that he grew and offered it to God. And then it says that Abel brought some of the best, the fatty portions of his animals and gave it to God. Now, why fatty portions? That's the best portions, right? That's the good stuff. And so he gives the very best he has to God. Well, it says that God paid attention to Abel's offering and didn't really pay attention to Cain's. And Cain got mad, angry. It says in the Bible that he burned hot with anger. It wasn't just like annoyed. At least it was like burning inside him, just burning and angry at how he was upset. And who's he mad at? Who's Cain mad at? Mad at God. Because God didn't take his offering, didn't like his offering. But the reality is, Cain only had himself to blame. Because go back to the offerings that they gave, right? Abel brought the best, right? That marbled filet mignon, right? The very best of the best, he gave that to God. Cain, it says, gave some. Like, I can spare this much, and gives it to God. Just some. So it wasn't about that God prefers steak over potatoes, or that God prefers meat over veggies. It's not that. It was the intention of the heart that God cared about. Abel gave the best. Cain gave some. And so now, how is Cain going to deal with his anger? We have some principles here that I want to kind of share with you about this. And the first one is, you get a big mirror when it comes to anger. Sometimes we like to blame someone else for anger. We need to look inside. Like, what is really driving you? If you're angry, what is really driving you? What's inside of you? That's a big, huge mirror that looks at you and says, what is driving my anger? And God's got to bring one to Cain about his anger. In fact, there's a story about a businessman who owned a hotel, Motel 6. And he would get yelled at by customers, and they're mad about this and that and the other, and they get really, really angry. So he got sick of it. So what he did, this is a true story, put a massive mirror up behind him, kind of angled down, so they can see themselves. He said the anger about stopped. When they saw what they looked like when they were angry, when they saw what anger looked like, they quit acting like that. Sometimes we need a big mirror to look at ourselves and say, wait a minute, before I get all angry here, before I get really up in someone's face, I need to ask the question of, what is driving my anger? Who am I really mad at? What's really going on inside of me? So God is going to bring Cain a big mirror, which goes to the second principle, and that is a mirror only has two sides, right? God knows Cain's upset, so he goes to Cain and warns him about his anger, right? It's Cain's problem. Cain brought the leftovers, and no one likes leftovers. And God could have been said, hey, Cain, what's with the leftovers? I don't appreciate you bringing me leftovers. That's not cool. But he doesn't do that. Instead, look what he says in Genesis 4:6. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? And why has your face fallen? Is it not the case that if you do well, you'll be lifted up? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its urge is for you, but you must rule over it. He's like, Cain, you got a choice. Why are you angry? If you do well, you'll be rewarded. Did you do well? Did you? Did you do the best you could? Or did you do some? And so he kind of, in care, God shows this mirror to Cain. He goes right to Cain to deal with the problem. That's what love and compassion does. It deals with the problem directly. God went to the person directly. Maybe you got someone at work or someone in your family, maybe. You need to go to them directly. And I get it. Water cooler talk is fun. Gossip is fun. We'd rather talk about our anger to our friends and our coworkers. It's easier to talk about the situation than deal with the person in it. We might even embellish the situation, right? Make it worse than it is so that everyone gets on board with us and we get a little posse around us. But that only makes it worse. It only fans the flames of anger. And what happens is everyone, including you, gets burned. Matthew 18, Jesus taught this. If another member of the church sins against you, go and point out the fault when the two of you are alone. If the member listens to you, you've regained that one. So the first principle is, a mirror has two sides. Go to the person directly and talk to them about it. Because if you start bringing more people into the situation, it gets more complicated. In family systems, which is kind of like this idea, the idea of like how families relate to each other, they talk about this, that you want to avoid triangulation. What that means like this is, let's say that I'm mad at Stacy. Like, I don't go to one of my kids and say, you know what, go tell your mom that she's a jerk. I don't get them involved in it. I go talk to Stacy directly. If I get my kids involved or someone else, now it's a bigger problem. We want to avoid triangulation, avoid getting other people into the situation. Go to that person directly. Now, what happens if they don't listen? Well, Jesus says, then, yeah, you can bring someone else with you if you care about them. Please understand that what he's talking about here is that you're trying to help the relationship, repair it, and fix it. You're not trying to just prove that you are right. Sometimes at work we can get into a situation where we want to be right. And we can cause anger to build up because we want to win. And we ignore the relationship. Jesus says this in Matthew 18:16. If you are not listened to, take along one or two others with you, so that every word may be confirmed by the evidence of two or three witnesses. He's saying, look, take a small group of people if you need to, but you're trying to fix the relationship. You're not trying to just prove you're right. You're trying to fix it. So do what you can with the smallest group possible to fix it. Keep the conversation direct. So again, mirror has two sides. Third thing, don't use a funhouse mirror. You know what a funhouse mirror is? Those weird shaped mirrors look all weird in. Or like when you have those iPhones where you can make the weird photo booth looking things. Like, don't make the situation more difficult than it has to be. Be specific about what you're upset about. Don't make a funhouse distorted version of what's going on. It means a couple things more specifically. Number one, speak for yourself, not others. I see this a lot. People say, well, I'm mad, and so's all my Twitter followers. I'm mad, and all my Facebook friends agree with me. Or I'm mad, and all these people agree. Look, it's you. Be specific about what you're upset about. Don't wrangle everyone else into it. Just because more people are upset with you does not make it right. Does not always mean it's right. And the second thing on that is, be specific about why you're angry. This is a big one, especially in marriages. This is only a piece of marriage advice. When you're angry about something, be specific of what you're mad about. Don't say, you never take out the trash, ever. Probably not true. You never respect me. You always get angry. Right? Be specific. Hey, last Thursday at the baseball game, you kind of embarrassed me when you shouted out at that umpire. Be specific about what you're talking about. Don't use words like always and never. They never go well. I just did that, didn't I? But you see what I'm getting at? Right? You want to be specific about what you're talking about when you talk about anger, because remember, emotions are involved. Right? Go back to Matthew 18:15. If another member of the church sins against you, go and point out the fault when the two of you are alone. Keep it specific and personal. And And we see this with God, right? Go back to Genesis chapter 4. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face fallen?" He's being very specific about him, his relationship, and what he did. Speak for yourself. Don't let others speak for you. And the fourth thing is, look away. Sometimes when we get angry, we need to look away. In Ephesians 4, some great advice from the Apostle Paul. He says, be angry. It's okay. Be angry. But do not sin. Do not let the sun go down in your anger. So yeah, you're going to get angry. I get angry. Jesus gets angry. God gets angry. But don't let it consume you. Don't let the sun go down before you fix it. Cain, you have a choice what you're going to do in the situation. Deal with it. Don't just let it fester and grow, because it'll eat you alive. There's a Chinese proverb that says, before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves. Super true. Super true. Before you go on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves. I know families that have been angry at each other for 20 years. Don't know why. They forgot about the why. They're just angry. That happens to people. They just hold on, and it festers, and they don't let the sun go down on their anger. Look away sometimes before it consumes you. So God goes to Cain, speaks to him directly. Hey, Cain, why are you mad? What could you have done differently? Is it something you did, Cain? And Cain lets the anger burn inside of him, and he lashes out, not at God, not at himself, but at his brother, Abel. Did Abel have anything to do with this whatsoever? Nothing. Abel did his thing, right? He took care of his flocks, found the best, gave it to God. That's all that Abel did. And it's Abel who's going to pay the price. Verse 8, Cain said to Abel, his brother, let us go out to the field. When they were there in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. The first mention of anger in the Bible leads directly to the first murder in the Bible. And it begins right here in the human heart. Some people argue, theologians, that Cain didn't know. He didn't know. There's never been a murder before, so he thought if he just whacked his brother with a rock, nothing would happen. I disagree with that. Because Cain intentionally took him out to the fields. Cain was intentionally angry. You know what anger does. And the intentional act of worship by Abel leads to an intentional act of murder by Cain. And we see very clearly that our relationship with other people and with God can't be separated. This starts with an act of worship toward God. And it finds itself expressed in a broken relationship and a murder. How we relate to God is connected to how we relate to other people. Remember this verse? Jesus said this, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. This is the first greatest commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Those two go together. And the opposite is true too. How you treat other people, how you treat God, it's all connected. Now here's the thing too about this story. What has Cain said to God so far in the story? I've read the whole story to you, so at least to at this point. Has Cain said anything to God? Nope, nothing. Not at all. God's spoken to Cain. God warned Cain, reached out to Cain, but Cain has said nothing back to God. He's not dealing with his anger. He just lashes out and murdered his brother. And then in verse 9, the Lord said to Cain, where's Abel your brother? And now Cain's going to say something. I do not know. There's the first lie. Am I my brother's keeper? That's hard words. I mean, look, am I my brother's keeper? Is that a question or an accusation? Which is it? Is it a question or accusation? Am I my brother's keeper? You made him. You made him, God. Shouldn't you be looking out for him? You know what's going on? Aren't you watching everything? Couldn't you have protected him if you cared about him so much? He gave you the best. Don't you like him the best? Why didn't you save him? Is that my job? I thought that was your job. Whew. Anger has a dark side. We can see that here in what he says. It's not my fault, God. It's yours. And God answers. Verse 10, what have you done? What have you done? You, not me. What have you done? That big mirror comes back out and points at Cain and says, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. What have you done? And again, anger just doesn't affect Cain and God. Cain and Abel. In fact, in the Hebrew here, in this verse, this word, brother's blood, is actually plural. It literally says in Hebrew, your brother's bloods are crying out from the ground. Does it make sense? Absolutely makes sense. When Abel dies, who dies with him? All of his potential. All of his kids, and his grandkids, and his great-grandkids. All of them have died with Abel. The choices we make about anger lead to broken relationships with people around us. We don't deal with it, but we can deal with it. We can because God has given us his Spirit, his grace to do that. So the question is, what about our anger, yours and mine? Are we willing to take the time to get out a big mirror and look at it and say, why am I angry? Just to sit down and just ask, why am I angry? What's going on inside of me? Are we willing to deal with others specifically and directly? To have the courage to do that. I know it's hard, but to have that courage to do it directly. Are you willing to put away the funhouse reflections of anger and look at them honestly, not caricatures or exaggerations? Because if you don't deal with anger, anger will always deal with you. But here's the good news. We have a God in Jesus, a friend who understands anger, who understands what it's like, and deals with us with grace, who wants us to deal with anger well.
Think I finally found my hallelujah. I've been waiting for this moment.